So why should you read The World of Five Gods cycle by Lois McMaster Bujold? Fans of the channel, people who watch my videos more regularly, know I am a big Bujold fan. I talked at some length about her Volkozogen saga sci-fi books and her World of Five Gods fantasy books, and I think these are, at this point, underrated. She is the author with the joint highest number of Hugo nominations, is it, or something like that, I think the joint highest number of victories and the second highest number of nominations, or something like that. We're talking about an important author who is, I think at this point, unjustly neglected, and I think in fashionable circles it's because she's seen as too popular, and in popular circles she's seen as too old. And this is a shame, because there's a lot to recommend her for. So, The World of Five Gods, there are 4 novels in this and 10 novellas. I haven't read one of the novels, and I have read 6 of the novellas, but not the other 4. In both cases, it's because they're currently only available as ebooks, and I do read ebooks, but I don't really want to read these as ebooks. So these are the novellas in these really nice buy-in hardbooks, actually. Hardbacks. These are collections of 3 each, and these are the 3 novels, of which I think I've got different editions for each one. That is a American mass market. That is a UK kind of trade, or mass market trade style thing. The UK style where the spines crack and people hate them. I don't. And this is an American trade. So yeah, I'm sorry for people who like consistent spines on the shelves. There are 2 main blocks here. There are the 3 original novels, let's say, which is The Curse of Shallion, The Paladin of Souls, and The Hallowed Hunt. The Hallowed Hunt came out in 2005, so you're talking about stuff that is all in the early to mid noughties. And then you've got the Penrick and Des series, which is 10 novellas at this point. One came out relatively recently, and a novel which came out last year, I think. These are from 2015 to 2021. So you're talking about an incredible amount of productivity in a short time. They were her first fantasy novels, therefore, for 10 years, or fantasy material, and they are their own sub-series. And the other 3 are all standalone, but somewhat connect. Particularly books 1 and 2 somewhat connect, and they all connect together. They are all in the same world, and there are definitely things that if you are reading one book, you'll appreciate in the other, all across the series. I think. So I've read the 3 main novels and the first 6 of the Pen and Des novellas in that sub-series. So I can't cover those. I wish I could. I will, hopefully buy-in will get a move on and get more out. But there's 2, I guess, big things I'm going to cover in terms of things that I think are worth recommending to you. And then I'm going to kind of quickly summarise the books I have read. And that will be how I'm going to do this. The first thing is, and it's connected, is that Bujold is she's very good at magic, theological world building. The basic world building is solid and good, and I like it. But I'm talking about more the kind of magic, theology, spirituality, world building. The World of Five Gods. There's a clue in the name. It's named after the 5 main supernatural powers, the 5 transtemporal beings who form a divine family. There's the father, the mother, the son, the daughter, and the bastard. The bastard, his mother is the mother, and his father is a demon, or that's the legend. So there's a sense in which he is somewhat outside that. So you have the Quintarian religion recognises all 5, and all our characters so far, all of the nations we've been to so far are Quintarian, and the Quadrines do not recognise the bastard, seeing him as a demon in the end. And part of this is Bujold's Fantasy Europe, the World of the Five Gods. It's a kind of inverted European map. It's late medieval, early Renaissance period, and clearly you've got a kind of soft parallels to Christianity and Islam, and that's partly the setting in the first 2 books being in Reconquista Spain, basically. There's also the old shamanic religion, which does recognise the 5 gods, but which has a heavy, large system of rituals based on animals and animal magic. And this is... so there's lots of variety there. one thing that is nice, and I should say it's worth saying that the first 3 books, these 3 were themed on a god each. In fact, Bujold, I think, describes one of the reasons she stopped writing the series at that point was that she felt straitjacketed by the fact she wanted to write 2 more novels that were based on the other gods she hadn't done. She had done the Mother, the Son, and the Bastard, I think, were the themes of the ones she'd written so far. I think Hallowed Hunt is definitely Son. I think Curse of Chalion is Bastard, and I think Paladin of Souls, I'm fairly sure, is... I say that, no, yeah, is Paladin of Souls Father? I don't remember. I was checking this earlier, but they're themed on a particular one of the gods, and it's a really nice device. But you could see why she might be like, I don't know what story I want to write about the mother. Whereas the Pen and Des ones are, if they're thematically rooted in a god, it's in the Bastard because of Pen's condition, which we'll get to, but it's not really themed officially on that. One thing that's really nice is that Bujold is great at describing the meta beliefs, what is going on, but also how people believe and experience and how they take part in civic religion, and that's much better than lots of fantasy religion where you don't really know why people take part in anything, except in the most nominal way. How religion affects people, how it affects society. The very fact you can see that a big cause of conflict between the Quadrines, well, the Rocknari, who are the Quadrines you get to know, and the Chalionese, the Ibrans in that case, is because they just think the world is so different. They think something fundamental about the world. Even though they both recognise the Bastard, they see the Bastard completely differently. It's good world building. It's better than lots of fancy religions. It's also the basis of the magic systems in the world. Or at least it kind of is at the back of it. The fact that she has envisioned this spiritual world and these different religious beliefs is where the magic comes from. This is, in that sense, it's not... There are no just wizards, as in people who read books and cast spells. There are no druids who just draw primal energy directly from the earth. There are shamans who have to do with the earth. But you get the idea. This is something where there is a very coherent and centralised set of ideas. Even though it's not necessarily hard magic, maybe it's a super hard soft magic system. Maybe that's the way to think about it. But there are set powers and there are ways it works. So in that sense, it's a hard magic system. 3 main magic systems that I can think of, that I can remember. First, the power of the gods. Second, the influence of demons. And third, the shamanic magics. There's also, and this is connected to the same stuff, the way that ghosts work. The fact that ghosts are spirits who are not drawn up into one of the gods at death. They are sundered for various reasons. And they can influence the world for a while, and then they break up and fade away over time. And so that connects to some of the stuff I'm going to be saying about how spirits work and the magic of spirits and of, almost ectoplasm, if you like. The gods cannot interact with the world directly. They can give visions, they can grant miraculous powers, they render the powers render the recipient a living saint. So an example is in Curse of Chalion, the groom of the menagerie, the royal menagerie, is able to mitigate the effect of the curse on King Oriko because his gift is one that allows the animals, I think to do with the wonder of rare animals, to do with the particular things to do with these animals to help the king deal with the curse or mitigate the curse. Demons, so the gods are subtle. Those are relatively subtle effects. Visions, completely indirect. The sainthoods are direct, but in ways that are very specialised and temporary. Demons, less subtle. They are, in essence, especially when they first arrive in the world one way or the other, they are chaos and destruction. They're not good. Many living saints are those who destroy demons and expel them. They are basically supernatural wild animals, and that's bad. They're obviously dangerous. They are largely disapproved of. You can see why the Rocknari are like, so you're saying the bastard's a demon. We don't really want that. But if they survive through several hosts, they can become quite wise and powerful. And this is something which is dealt with. It's interesting the way this develops over the course of the books, particularly the way, partly because of the way that the Hallowed Hunt starts to think about that. Where initially this is chiefly seen as a danger in Chalion and Ibra. It's seen as a danger. By the time we get to Penric, we're like, okay, so sorcerers of the temples can carry demons under supervision. Basically, there are certain cultivated demons who have real skills. And so Desdemona is a demon demon. At this point you realise, so demon is something which we naturally use pejoratively, but eventually it becomes an inaccurate term because we really mean just spirit. It's a spirit that has taken on, as it's grown up, has taken on knowledge. And Desdemona is bonded with Penrick accidentally in the first book in the Penrick novellas. And so she's this very wise, and she sees herself as a she, because that she's always been through female hosts. This is her first male host. And she is very wise and powerful. They have a positive and symbiotic relationship, so different to the many of the demons you hear about, particularly earlier in the series. Shamans, the final one, have a few powers which are powerful and direct, but in very different ways. So they mostly relate to sacrificing animals, to binding animal spirits. They can sacrifice an animal to give a spirit warrior kind of a limited effect, extra strength, speed, that kind of thing. Much more powerfully, they can breed essentially via sacrificing one dog into another dog, and then that dog at a later date is sacrificed and their spirit goes to the third dog, and eventually get a great beast who is essentially a sort of animal god. Think in terms of like the godlings in Princess Mononoke. They are this almost often semi-intelligent, or at least engaged with the world, magical beast, and when they are sacrificed they create a shaman. And the shaman gains a great power with different kinds of abilities. Well, I won't go into that here, but the human with a wide variety of powers, which is completely different to the demon sorcerer, the demon-ridden sorcerer who either has it under control or doesn't, or the living saint or recipient of godly visions. They're all very different magic systems. You can see themes, of course, between them. Magic accrues to a soul, because another shaman ability relates to binding spirits to a banner, like the ghosts to a banner, so they can be dealt with later, of your warriors, so they can be saved later. So magic accrues to a soul. Spiritual forces go through various hosts and become more powerful. A lot of magic is to do with moving these spirits one place or another, like the transfer of energy. It's very coherent. It's not quite the classic hard magic system, the kind of real quasi-science, but it's a very satisfying one, and it's very close to that. Secondly, the other big thing I have spoken of in favour in these books, and I think I would say it's true in all of these books, is that Bujold is very good at character. She's very good at character. I've spoken about this in my individual reviews of Vorkosigan books and the Curse of Chalion. But she is a gentle master of building character, of making you care about her characters. It's a really interesting contrast, because I've read a lot of Joe Abercrombie, over the last year, and there's lots to say about that that's good. He's great at character, that his great strength, and there are surprising similarities to Bujold. But one thing is that Abercrombie highlights the frailty and weakness of human beings, the folly within each one of us. He really explores the battle between good and evil in the individual human soul in a world which is uncaring and brutal. Like Abercrombie, Bujold likes humans. That's my controversial take here. Abercrombie is profoundly humane. He likes humans. But Bujold is much more positive up front. She's not pretending, I think, to make the same kinds of books, of course. But fundamentally, she thinks we are funny and clever. Often we're well-meaning creatures. She gives her characters real stakes, motives, arcs. This is especially true in the earlier novels. Penrick and Des novels are... they're shorter. I haven't read Assassins of Thassalon, the one Pen and Des novel. I really want to, and hopefully that will be out in printed copy soon. So they try to accomplish less in each one. Pen and Des have shorter arcs per novel or novella. In those early books, though, there are arcs that are completed for, Kaz and for the main character in Paladin of Souls, and for Ingrid in Hallowed Hunt. They're great. Her choice of protagonists is also great. The first few novels, one kind of early middle-aged character, middle-aged character, and to be fair, Ingrid is a young, potentially troubled nobleman, much more classic. But the first two have these older protagonists who have really different perspectives on events and emotional stakes. They are not classic fantasy tropes. Having a middle-aged woman, and it's one of the things about Pen and Des, is obviously having Des as essentially not a protagonist, but as the main companion, having an ancient demon with lots of knowledge, but essentially presenting as a multifaceted older woman, and of course there's a degree of authorial insertion here, not that it's directly insertion as either of those characters, but the idea of an older woman rather than the classic tropes of young man, young woman, or man or woman in their prime, particularly man in their prime, like the king figure. These are very different. Only Ingrid and Pen really match that amongst the protagonists in the books. So yeah, I think those are the two main things I'd say. If you like magic, the magic in these is really good, really worth reading. Very different to what you might read in other fantasy series nowadays. And if you like character, she's a very strong character writer. She's very strong at writing character in Vorkosigan Saga as well, which I'll talk about another time. Let's just summarise the books I have read. It'd be nice to summarise everything, but then if I was when I do a Discord on these videos, I'm not going to talk about 40 books, am I? So this is the stuff I've read. I read the majority of stuff, and I will, in due time, read the rest. The first book, Curse of Shalion, Kazrael. He comes back from a time of slavery amongst the Rocknari, who are this quadroon worshipping people, and he discovers that a curse has fallen upon the royal house of Shalion. And so he enters their service. Magical events happen that end up with him. They affect him, they change him. He tries to deal with the curse and the political intrigues around the throne, because it's not the antagonist. Who is an antagonist and why things are going wrong is complicated. This is part of this issue about characters, that things stem naturally from character and from fairly normal human behaviour and motives. And so who is in the wrong and when and why is much more interesting than in many parallel books. That is Curse. The world building, the mystery are both really good. The world building is the first time she's entering this world, and it's great. The mystery is probably the best because she likes mysteries, and that crosses to Vorkosigan in some books too. But she likes mysteries, and this is maybe the best of them. It's the most coherent of them and the most satisfying. Paladin is a Hugo winner, her most recent Hugo winner. Probably, given the Hugo's taste at this point, her last. It is deservedly a Hugo winner. It's an older character. This is also, I think, probably the longest of her books, I would think. Yeah, I think so. It's nearly 600 pages. An older character who is in Curse as well. They were not a main character. They head off and they run into a potential romance, but there's all kinds of political and military issues going on around them. But the romance is rather troubled by some strange events, a haunting issue around, to do with ghosts around things. And this is perhaps, the mystery is fine, it's less exciting perhaps, they're perfectly fine, but it's more just excellent for character work, world building, action, and romance, because Bujold is the rare top tier fantasy writer who is also a very good romance writer. And I think that is at its best of the books where there is a romance, that is at its best in Paladin of Souls, in my view. The Hallowed Hunt, this has also definitely the most American cover of these. You can tell, this is an American edition, and you can tell with the mid-shade, kind of mid-vibrant shades, and the character looking, with that kind of style of art, a character looking at the viewer. So Hallowed Hunt, it's in a different place. It's no longer in Shalion, it's no longer in that part of the world. It's in the Weald, which is basically fantasy Germany, with a hint of fantasy Britain. And it's set prior to the other books, I think, and it covers a lot of shamanic stuff. It has great magic, it has great world building. It's a really interesting different place. I liked Ingrid. There's this basically quasi-Norse prince in it who's quite fun. The magic in this may be the most interesting of any of the books. I think that's probably fair to say. But there's a weakness, which is that the plot is a bit muddled. Some of the character arcs, though they are still good, that's one thing. Her plot is muddled, but she just about gets away with it. It's interesting. You want to know what the mysteries are, but frankly, sometimes like, oh man, this mystery is so exciting. Wait, what is it? What's going on in it? The character arcs more or less get away with that, but it's just a caveat that this is the weaker of those three books. Then there are the Pen and Des novellas. If you are wanting to read in hard copy, the two so far are Penrick's Progress and Penrick's Travels. Of these, Penrick's Progress is Penrick's Demon, Penrick and the Shaman, and Penrick's Fox. Pen is a very minor nobleman. He is the seventh son of a fairly local minor lord who's going to marry the daughter of a cheese merchant and then bonds with Desdemona. And he ends up being a divine sorcerer and scholar of the Bastards Order. And in the first one, there's Penrick's Demon, very good setup, perfectly respectable. Penrick and the Shaman, where he meets a friend, makes a friend, with the locator of the father's order, and then they're hunting a shaman. Penrick's Fox, involving him learning about shamanic magic properly, and that, I think Penrick's Fox might be my favourite of those. And then Penrick's Travels, Penrick's Mission. These are basically the ones around his travel to Sidonia, which is basically fancy Byzantine Empire, Greece. And Penrick's Mission, Mirror's Last Dance, and then Prisoner of Limnos. I think it might be the Prisoner of Limnos or Mirror's Last Dance were published later, and then this has been reinserted in chronological order. There's one of those that happens through these two books. It might be actually Penrick's Fox gets bounced back. It was book 6, but chronologically it's book 3. These are fun. I probably enjoyed this arc a bit less. I probably was less excited by the companions, I liked the world was still fun, and I think Sidonia was an interesting place and the things they had to do were interesting, but probably I preferred the setting and the characters in the first 3. They're all good. I would recommend them. If I'm recommending the whole series, I'd certainly recommend Pen and Des. The places to start are going to be either, preferably, Penrick's Travels, Penrick's Demon, or Curse of Shallion. Though Paladin of Souls would generally be considered the biggest achievement in the series, I wouldn't recommend starting there because I think it benefits from Curse of Shallion in lots of ways, because you then know the setting better and you have some context on some characters involved. So yeah, that is why I'd recommend it. I think there are things like she is not... she does very respectable plots. She's actually very good at setting up different kind of plot stakes. Often very good at setting up and pulling off a mystery. Same in the Vorkosgan saga. But maybe that is a weaker area because the plots are devices for talking about ideas and for talking about characters. And so they're not things where you're like, man, she's so into thrilling plots. And the action is actually usually quite respectable, but I'd say they're not action books. She is not excited about writing detailed combat scenes that are many, many pages long. Again, action is a vehicle for ideas and for characters. And so if those are things where you're like, I only care about plot and action, you might struggle with Bujold. I don't know. I think maybe the counter-argument is, if you feel like that, maybe read Penrick's Demon and just see what you think, because it's 100 and something pages. So yeah, that is why I think you should read, or if you should read, the World of Five Gods cycle. If you have read them, tell me what you think in the comments. I'd love to hear. And indeed, if you like Bujold in general, let's get some more Bujold conversation going. Till next time.